Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good day wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the next episode of No Dice, No Glory. Sponsored by our jobs that actually pay us money, we're coming to you not at all live from an abandoned arms factory deep under a mountain in West Virginia. We are proud to proffer to you the finest in wargaming coverage. Without any further ado, let's get this show on the road.
Well, thanks, Sean, for that great introduction. Once again, we got to do a podcast together, my brother. I miss you, but today we have a special guest, and it's somebody that I've spoken to numerous times. Never bought the game, and I was looking for something different, and I ran into an Adeptacon, and it's Dave. I'm going to butcher your last name, but it's Enstines, right?
No, it's perfect.
Oh, so and he's from
It's
the war.
phonetic, but it scares the heck out of everybody because same letters repeating.
What's its origin? Where's that from?
The last name's originally Norwegian. They spelled it with an I until they moved here.
Norwegian.
So it was
Minnesota.
Yeah, weird. Yeah, not a whole lot of those here.
Right. So like you're having a bad day, you shoot an oofda out, right?
Yeah, I'm Norwegian, German, and Irish.
Wow. So the propensity of violence or is high with you. No wonder.
And I'm incredibly appropriate for like the St. Paul area here.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty neat. But anyway, we're here to talk about this game, and I know you guys can see me holding it up. They can't. It's sans résultat, which means, well, I'm going to butcher this too, but it's like, it means with no result.
Correct.
And it's a Napoleonics game at the core level. It's at a much larger level. And I've seen this game at tournament after tournament. And if you guys out there remember Glenn Van Meter, the Amish crack dealer, because he kind of looked like one. And he's like, I love the game, but like he loves every game. But I was looking for something different, and I finally picked up the book. You weren't there, and I read it. And this game is different. But before we get into all that, hey, we're gonna introduce yourself. Tell us when you first got into gaming, and what was that first game that got you hooked into this hobby?
Oh wow. Okay. I first got into gaming so in between 6th and 7th grade.
Wow.
My aunt's family was living out in, where the heck were they? Delaware. They were living out in Delaware. My grandfather,
The
what's
state
that?
of Delaware. The
The
state of
state of Delaware. Yeah, my uncle was in
Banking.
cooling systems. He worked on like commercial AC units for I don't know, shipping companies and stuff. So anyways, we go out to visit him, and we never went anywhere when I was a kid to speak of. Handful of places. It wasn't real common for us to vacation. And it was the only time I'd been out to the East Coast, and my dad made a list of places they wanted his son to see because there's a lot to see out there.
Yeah.
And so we went to Philadelphia, we went and saw Independence Hall, we went and saw the Liberty Bell, and we drove up into Pennsylvania and spent a day at Gettysburg. And I was just in awe of it.
How old? So you must have been about 10.
Between 6 and 7, 12. 12 going on 13.
Okay.
And we came back here. I had no idea wargaming was a thing. But my dad and I used to do scale model kits, like testers.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Build F-14s and Apache helicopters and whatever, and the snap together, glue together kits.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking they'd be cool to make Civil War dioramas. And so I started hunting for models of Civil War soldiers. And I found a catalog that had like these, I don't know what they were. They were huge. They were probably like 54 millimeter or something, but they were pewter. They were expensive. They were like, I don't know, 15, 20 bucks a pop or something like that. And I was trying to figure out how I was going to afford any of these. And then I just kept calling around, working the literal phone book. I remember sitting in my parents' kitchen with the yellow pages looking up hobby shops and stuff. And I found a shop not too far from us that sold wargaming stuff. And I didn't know that's what they sold at the moment. I just knew it was hobby stuff. But anyway, I get down there and my mother drives me down because I'm too young to drive. And I bumped into a guy named Scott Allen, he's probably dead now. He moved to Texas maybe 20 years ago. But and he was, I was 13. He was grown adult with, kids on the way to being adults at the time.
I'll tell you what, with you meeting a guy that's old and you so young, and then you started off with, well, we were visiting my uncle, this story could have been so bad. Thank you for not taking it down that bad. Well,
I'll tell you
showed me some things.
I'm pretty sure. So anyways, we're in the shop. My mother and I are in this gaming shop, and I'm looking at stuff, and this guy starts talking to me and telling me about the stuff I'm looking at because I don't know anything. And so anyway, he hands me a pack. I start telling him what I want to do. And he says, no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to build dioramas. You want to play war games. They're like moving dioramas. It's way better.
He is right.
And he goes, he is right. He goes over the shelf. He grabs me a pack of Iron Brigade Old Glory back when they still had 100 figures in the bag.
Remember that?
Yeah. And puts that in my hand and then walks me over to this rack where they've got some ospreys. And he says, you can look through these. You can kind of get an idea. And, if you're not too obvious, the guy at the counter won't get mad that you're just looking at them all the time and never buying them. And make a couple of notes, and then you'll know how to paint them and take them home. And get painting and get going. And that was how I got into wargaming. So the first game that I ever got into was Johnny Reb 2.
Oh my God. Yeah. Now you could get like a PDF of it and has coffee stains on it. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I think I have it somewhere.
You played Johnny Reb?
I've never played it.
It's a terrible game. I love it, but it's a terrible game. I mean, it's great. It's one of those, it's of its era. In some ways, it's absolutely brilliant. It was an incredibly popular game. It deserved it. It was terrific. Now looking back on it, you're like, oh my gosh, how did we do that? There's so many charts. There's so much computation.
Yeah, that I remember. That's why I think I never played it. And I'm good with math. It didn't seem fun.
Well, this wasn't even a question of math. This was just it wasn't quite like Empire, but it was a little bit like Empire in that there was kind of a chart for everything and there was kind of a rule for everything.
Well,
and
remember back then, and I never asked your age, and we shouldn't say it here in the air. But like I remember Squad Leader going into Advanced Squad Leader, so I remember stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, and there are different design methodologies at different times, right? And the design methodology that was popular then was you create a rule for each situation. You don't create a general rule and then figure out how to modify it for different situations. You create a rule for each situation.
And do you know why that is? Because if you look at the first miniatures games, um, they really sprang from a lot of board game designers, and it took years for those type of games to be designed by people that never played board games. And that to me
Sure.
is, I always tell people, you play a board game against somebody, but you play a miniatures game with them because you have to interpret the situation, the terrain. There's so many things that you and your opponent have to kind of come to an agreement on, and the rules bind us. Where, if I'm playing a board game, a massive board game, or even an easy one, there's got to be a rule for it. Because if there's no rule for it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's I don't know.
I
It's
would
a crackpot theory.
no, I would agree with that because there there are a lot of things that are undefinable in a miniatures game design. I can't tell you what the slope of the hill is, right? Precisely. I can tell you that it's not enough to matter. I can tell you that it's enough to matter X amount, enough to matter Y amount. But then I have to tell you how to represent that on the table because you're building the terrain. I'm not providing it. If I'm providing a board game, I'm providing the terrain. I got a map. The
You're
terrain
getting
is on it.
everything.
Yeah, it's all controlled. There's a lot less control in a miniatures environment.
Right. Because, I always tell players, well, there's when they build their lists, and because list building is one of the hidden, secret desires of every game, miniatures gamer. But there's two things you don't know. One is the table you're playing on, especially in a tournament, and you don't know what you're playing, who your opponent is running. So it's like a totally different mindset, and yeah, it's well, you got into the Civil War and you kind of stayed in that 19th century. How did we go from the Civil War, which, believe it or not, you figure most gamers start with that in the United States. I think I told you my story. The first time I ever played a miniatures game, board gamer since I was 11,
Yeah.
was playing Napoleonics at Salute 100 years ago. And 20, wow, that's like 27, 28 years ago. Wow. I'm old too, my man. And, it's funny because I didn't get back into Napoleonics forever. And I did the normal Napoleon at War, because you ever want to start a fight at a miniatures con, you go up to a bunch of Napoleonic gamers, right, that are just congregating and go, hey, what rule system is the best for Napoleonics? The cops will need to be called. Because
There's a great stand-up comic. I don't know that he's great in general, but this joke that he tells is fantastic. He's this really, really skinny, really, really pale, redheaded guy. And this is, I mean, I don't know how old the heck he is now. He did this bit 25 years ago. But he does it about religion, where he goes out to the Golden Gate Bridge and there's a guy who's going to jump off and he starts talking to him. He's trying to talk him out of jumping off the bridge. And he starts talking about, do you believe in God? And then what religion are you? And he keeps, everything's in common, right? Oh yeah, me too. Oh yeah, me too. And they go through all these derivations of getting more and more and more specific. And so they've aligned on everything. And they're like, I don't know, 14 steps down the ladder of derivations of everything is shared. And then the guy says, well, are you blah, 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 type A or blah, 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 type B? The guy says type B. And the comic says, die, heathen, and pushes him off the bridge. And I
wow.
feel like you could do that with Napoleonics. Are you a Napoleonic player? Oh yeah. And you just keep going, keep going, keep going. And at a certain point, somebody will go, oh, heathen, go away. You're terrible.
So so I got the book at Adeptacon. Believe it or not, I read it that night, and there was a few things I noticed that are a lot different about the book. One is you take a professorial. By the way, audience, Dave and I both have bad colds, so this could be our last podcast ever. I'll make sure I get it out, you know, to you guys. I'll post it tonight for next Tuesday, but who knows what's going to happen? The crapshoot of life here with us, but it's
We both do sound like we're dying on this. This is great.
yeah, which makes it better because hey, I start hallucinating. So like you don't get into the rules of this book until like page 40 and you explain
Yeah,
every
the rules
unit.
are actually kind of short.
The rules are extremely short and you use this little iconographic with everything so you know what you're looking for. I like that. That's pretty slick. I may steal that. I don't know what I'm going to use it for. But it goes into the, this is what a regimen is. This is what this is. I'll tell you what I noticed first of all. I didn't see an entire section on line of sight. And I'm like, no, it has to be here somewhat. And it kind of is, but then I realized what this game's about, and it is way different. And I remember I had the book and I was reading it, and some guy who I know from actually this area goes, yeah, we got the game. We didn't like it. It's a lot of marching and not a lot of shooting. And I'm like,
Well,
well,
that's not false.
it's a core. It's about maneuver where, if you look at warfare before then, they would just meet at a field. The American Revolution, meet at a field. There was a ton of maneuver in this period, and you can't capture it at that, you know, black powder level. You just can't. But at this level where each kind of stand is a battalion and units are primarily divisions, so the player controls up to 2 divisions. The command and control, the marching makes sense. And then I started to read it and I'm like, I've been looking for something like this. How did you get from I'm going to do why did you do Napoleonics game and how did you arrive at this one for your design?
How long short version do you want?
Well, I mean, you and I probably can't go more than an hour without vapor locking.
Okay.
I'm
So
willing to hang in as much as you can, but
the short version,
whole
we'll
story.
elaborate as much as you want, but the short version is that I got into gaming Napoleonics by accident. That's a different story, but I got into gaming Napoleonics by accident. Then I figured out what Napoleonics was. Then I got real interested in Napoleonics, and I went out and searched, like we all do, for the Napoleonic game.
Oh yeah.
And I was mostly disappointed by all the stuff I found. I liked a lot of the stuff I found, but it wasn't quite what I wanted.
You had an itch that needed to be scratched.
So I set out to find the thing that I wanted. And then while I was building the thing that I want, I found something that was okay. And then but the people I was playing with, we just couldn't make it happen. It was hard to work with the game system that we found. So then I took it aside and I went, okay, I'll thin this. I'll go through and I'll identify the terminology that actually matters and I'll make sure that it's used consistently. And I'll just kind of make I'm not going to change any of it. I'm just going to make an edit of it so that it's easier for us to digest. And about 8 pages through that, I went, yeah, this isn't going to work. I got to build something.
Right.
So then the next step was I'm building it. That went on for quite some time. And I was.
How long did it take
For
that first rule set? Because we're on second edition already.
roughly 6-7 years.
Which is about how long it takes.
The second edition, so the original edition was released in 2015. I started working on it in 2009 as a kind of a part-time hobby project. I worked the last year or so, I worked on it almost full-time. And then now I look back at it. At the time, I didn't feel this way, but now I look back at it and I say the original edition was effectively a test product. It wasn't really a finished product. In retrospect, I feel that way. And then second edition was written in about 6 months and was released in 2016. And then we had second edition for about 6 years. And then Series 3, and Series 3 was being worked on and off for that 6 years, mostly off, but sometimes on. They're just problems that I wanted to solve that I hadn't figured out how to solve. So I'd go back and mess with them. And then the 10, 12 months prior to its release in 2022, I believe, because it was a 6-year differential, so that'd be right. Was on the way out of COVID. We didn't get COVID. Oh gosh, we didn't even get COVID until the convention we released it at. We managed to avoid it all that time, and then we go to the convention we release it at, and 75% of the people who worked at our booth got COVID at that convention.
Yeah.
It was not great. It was not great.
I think the first time I got COVID was I caught it at Adeptacon. And the second time was at Adeptacon. Maybe I should stop going to cons. They're killing me.
I will tell you, I have never been so long in my adult life as when we were all staying away from each other. But there's different parts of that suck because, people got to people.
Yeah. I'm a
it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, that's right. So the approach you took on this game, and look, we're going to geek out on game design because people that listen to this show know I love talking about that. I help with a lot of designs and they all suck. But it's part of the process. But how did you come to this rule set is just way different. Why did you kind of push it in this direction? Because very few games do at that core army level, which you could pull off in this game with ease.
I wanted to play whole battles.
Which you can.
I did not want to play portions. I did not want to say, okay, we're playing this sector of this battle. And then I just kind of kept cutting stuff. And by cutting stuff, and this was some advice that I followed that I got from a gaming buddy. He gave me a specific example. I was trying to figure out how to handle battalion level formations, but I didn't want players making decisions about them and constantly fiddling with them. And he says, why don't you get rid of them?
Yeah.
And at first my reaction, no, you can't do that. People will reject that. That's not going to work. And then I kept thinking about it. I go, man, it sure would solve a bunch of my problems. And then I just started looking at things that way.
So you had a little paradigm paralysis.
Yeah.
Couldn't break out of it. Somebody
slapped But his advice was positive, and so then I just started applying that. Do I need to deal with X? Should I just remove X? And what are we focused on? And just keep narrowing that focus. So, when I first designed it, deploying division-sized elements was not a big part of the game. Now I would say it's one of the defining parts of the game because it is zoomed way out and you are trying to maneuver and stage position, and a lot of that is when do you deploy a division versus keep it marching.
You could lose the game at that point. my opinion.
Yes.
If you deploy too late, and if you deploy too early, you lose your mobility because you have to get off the roads. Like,
Yes.
first of all, this is a game that really uses all of the map, not in size, but in what the terrain did for for the situation, for the environment, which I kind of like. And so got the rules, sat in when you were explaining it, but the had to do some work while I was there. That's how I pay for my free lunch. And went back and sat down with you and Jeff, and I just got an invite. I am hoping to feel better and play this weekend. And the game clicked for me, where it's about, yes, there is combat in the game, but it is putting your force in position. And I like the decision making, right? Because Napoleonics, and look, I used to play Napoleon at War, which is now disappeared. But like, you're already you march into contact, and it's who wins the firefights wins that game. And I know that it wasn't like that. Even in the U.S. Civil War, where you had flanking maneuvers, and it was about position. It was about position and terrain, and when your opponent advances, charges, and when you sit back. And I love the little decisions that you have to make in the game. Is this just a happy accident, or was this on purpose?
Oh,
And you
I
can
mean,
lie.
it
No one's gonna check.
well, it was purposeful, but I guess there were a lot of accidents that led to success,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. I mean, like you said about the map, and you use the whole map, and the map is important. A question that we get sometimes about our campaign guides. We put out this series of campaign guides that have got 8 to 15 or so historical scenarios in for a given campaign, right? And so somebody will go, well, geez, there's a lot of roads on this map. Which ones are important? Can't you just tell me the important ones? I have no idea which ones are going to be important in your game, because the road network, the road network in ESR is not it's not I get a 50% road bonus and I go faster and that gives me a tactical advantage somewhere. The road network is how I control my movement, because you're playing at such a high ground scale, and you're moving such large bodies of troops that if in order to reduce the gaminess of movement, we say effectively, you can take the most direct route to where you're going, or you can follow a road. So if you stare at that road network, you go, oh man, now I got options. I can do flank marches. I can take a slower path rather than a faster path in order to make sure that my divisions collide at the time that I need them to. But that's a different mode of thinking about what roads are for and how to use them. And it means that all of a sudden, which roads are important is a dynamism that's determined by the players in your game.
Right. Which
It also
I think
means
is
that
pretty
Germany
neat.
plays a lot different than Russia, because in Russia you've got a lot less roads and they're of a lot lower quality, and so all of a sudden it's like I got a lot less options on this map.
Yeah, it's one thing I could tell from reading the book, and then I have the Russia campaign, is that you did your research here. How how long did it take to get the campaign books up and going?
The first campaign guide that we did was the previous edition of the 1812 one, going into Russia. So that was 2016. We did that in parallel with doing the second edition of the rules. I will tell you that the original edition of the campaign guides, we had done 8 of them in soft cover, and they're a lot different than what the hardcover one you're holding. They're a lot similar too, but there's a lot more content in the hardback editions that we're doing now. The uniform plates in the back of them, we do all these uniform images now for every unit in any one of the scenarios is represented in the back with a full set of officer, musician, elite companies, regular guys, fronts and back, footwear, horse furniture. That was sparser in the original editions of those that we did. The original one of 1812 had 600 or so in it, and the one you've got has got 3,000.
3,000 uniform combinations.
3,000 uniform images.
I never counted. It's weird. It's a thicker book. I have it right here. And like, you're right. Because there's got to be at least 30 or 40 on every page, and you have at least.
And it's about half the book.
It's about half the book, which is great because I didn't have to pull out all my old Ospreys, and I got a Napoleonic uniform book when I was at the museum in Paris, and it's in French, which, based on the terminology you use, you probably So what I noticed also is it's not hussar for the German type it's hussar. You use the actual name in the actual language, transliterated to English.
As best as we can. And I will tell you that that's a little bit rougher than it ought to be, because we try to do these as fast as we're able, which still means that we're putting out like one a year. But it's a lot of information, and I'm not fluent in enough languages, but we do the best that we can with them. But we've had some people ask us, why the heck do you have to spell these different terms in their transliterated versions of the different languages? And I love it because it's something that I will most commonly get the question from somebody who's been gaming a really long time in historicals, but they never phrase it that way. They phrase it as, don't you think this is going to screw up the young people who have never played before? And I said, no.
F them.
The young people who have never played before have no idea what the thing's called anyway. I got to tell them what it's called no matter what I call it.
Right. It's a learning curve. Yeah. Well, I started relearning Russian with the invasion of Ukraine, because I was watching a lot of the Russian, talk shows, which are, I got to tell you, Jerry Springer's got nothing on these whack nuts out there, but it's a very verbal language, and like, there's few things I knew. I knew what polk was, and you could pick it up. It's because you do explain it, but the color plates are amazing. And you also did something too that I thought was pretty interesting. So all my Napoleonics has been around the Peninsula Campaign and the 100 Days. You got me into Russia, which gladly. So I know now I'm going to have to reread some of the books I never read. How do you reread something you never read? Skimming. And go back
if you're looking for good history in English on Russia, Alexander Makaberitsa is the historian you're looking for. He's prolific. He's written a ton of stuff. The guy's brilliant. He's a professor in Louisiana. He's from Georgia, the country, not the state.
Yeah.
He's a fantastic, gregarious guy. He's a very good writer, and he's an excellent historian. And if you're looking for Napoleonic Russian stuff in depth, that's the direction you want to go.
I think I've heard of him. I may even have a book or two of his because a couple of years ago we had a guy on that wrote a book about Waterloo. And I remember meeting him in a Storicon. You probably met him too, because he gravitated toward all those games. And I said, "Is your book about how Waterloo changed the world?" He goes, "No, it's about how the world changed Waterloo." It's a fascinating book. And you could go back a couple of, I mean, we did it a couple of years ago. Now, it's an interesting thing. If you listen to the end of the podcast, we say, "Hey, after the Napoleon movie comes out, we'll get together and talk about it." And he saw it right away. And he goes, "Have you seen it yet?" And I go, "No." He goes, "We're going to skip it." And, but he knew. You ever see the movie Being Napoleon about the reenactment?
Yeah, yeah.
He knew. He's close friends with the American guy.
Yeah, Mark. What's that? I haven't met him, but he's he and I know some overlapping people.
Yeah, so we never got together because I watched that movie. It was horrible. Sorry, Ridley Scott. Take me to sue me. So
I will tell you the positive about it. There's a positive in everything. The objectively positive thing about that film is the amount of art, of paintings that were recreated as live scenes in that film in incredibly high fidelity
he did a good
is
job with that.
amazing.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say the gratuitous nudity. So thanks for not saying it. Because I would have said that, like, it's a bad movie, but there's a lot of nudity in it, and but not too much. That's why I can never get past episode 5 of Game of Thrones. It was too gratuitous. So so the game has come out, and it's not a tournament game. One thing everybody here needs to understand. And you set up at almost every con with these beautiful tables, and hey, lo and behold, there's like 8 guys in my neighborhood on this email chain that play. How's the game been kind of accepted by the community that accepts nothing without any complaints?
Um, I mean, that's a hard question to answer. We
It
we
is.
have a fan base. We've got it's a unsurprisingly. And see, I don't know that anything I'll say about this is actually like useful, newsworthy, because like
We're
the
not here
people
to
who like it really like it,
right.
and the people who don't really don't. But is that different from any other Napoleonic game?
No, not at all. And what I don't understand is, from reading the rules, from seeing it being played, that it is so different that why aren't more people playing this? Like, I said the same thing about Napoleon at War, which I can mention it's a dead game, but then I realized, oh, the game does have some warts, and you're not making that many decisions. Your formations make a difference: line, column, square. Which is the great thing about your game. You don't have to go into square because it's at such a high level. You assume that these units will go into square. You're not at that lower level. You're at that core division commander level where the units will test and do what they need to do. The other one too, which I like, is the combat. Now, a lot of people will say this is a detractor. I don't think so. The combat is clean and abstract. Like,
You don't manage it.
you don't. It happens. It happens during movement. I mean, it's just a kind of a force of nature within the game. And I'll tell you what, like, I could see a lot of gamers not liking that because it breaks their paradigm of what they like playing. They want to see a smoke-filled battlefield. And really all they're seeing is a small portion of a smoke-filled battlefield. This one is covering, like, when I was advancing, Tom was playing against me as cavalry, this and that. And I realized I needed to get that division up because I'm looking at that objective marker. And I had a feeling
Yep.
it was the real one. So I need to block what that charge can become. But, like, You don't take units off the table. At least
No,
we
they're
do.
always in your way.
They're always there. And it's instead of just retreating towards a map edge, you go back to your baggage train. Once again, historical, that there's a lot of little things in the game that other games just don't have. Every other game is move to contact and push your enemy back. Where I'm looking at that table, and I think you said it was 6x9 or something like that.
The one in our booth was 6x5. The one up in the event space where we had a couple of them, those were like 5x9 or 6x9.
I'm going to use that damn map, right? I am. We say like, hey, if you deploy your troops too early, too late, you could lose the game. If you don't pick your objectives properly and already are thinking how to get there and try to hide it from the enemy, you could also have a very tough day. And I kind of like those little things about it. It is as people have picked it up and you have a very loyal fan base, what have they loved about the game? Because they had to have told you.
They like the maneuver of it. They like I'm playing for position. I'm not I'm not playing for the eighth of an inch turn on the flank that gets me the extra pip on my die to blow up a battalion. I am trying to manage a whole battle. And that's also the thing, you asked what's the hurdles for people. It's getting their head around the scope of the game because it is so much more zoomed out than people are playing. I'll pick on Napoleon's Battles because Napoleon's Battles was the first Napoleonic miniatures game that I ever played, and I really liked it. You should always pick on your friends.
Yeah.
But Napoleon's Battles is a game where we call the units brigades, but we could just as well call them battalions because they behave the same way.
Right.
I can go into square, which isn't square. It's prepared for cavalry or to receive cavalry or whatever. But it's effectively square. And I don't have a musket range, but I have a skirmish range, and that's effectively treated as musketry. And whether I make decisions like whether or not my brigade should shoot. And those sorts of things I think are fine, but they're all very tactical decision making. And the fact that I change what the playing pieces are called doesn't change the decisions I'm making about them. Mm-hmm. And so the paradigm with ESR that both people struggle to get their head around and that people who do causes them to love it so much is that a division behaves like a division. Right. It's marching down the road. It's not incredibly fast, but it's also not very slow in the pace of my ability to control what it does. It can get beyond, the situation has changed and I really wanted it to veer off. Nope, sorry, it doesn't turn on a dime and now it's out of position and this is a problem for you. You have to manage the battle. The friction is not only with your opponent, the friction is also control over your own elements and force. And how long does it take that division to deploy? I don't exactly know. How long is that division going to last in combat? I can estimate and I can guess, but I don't exactly know. And those are the stressors. The other thing about it that I think that I know that players really like, and I also know that many players initially really struggle with is Todd, one of our GMs, one of the guys out by you, likes to say that you have an incredibly limited toolkit. You have very few tools by which to control this vast battlefield and how your troops act. It's not a game where you just roll high and you get to do what you want.
Yeah, that's something I noticed is die rolling. A lot of people. I would always say, look, you could be the greatest strategist tactician in the world. You're still rolling a damn die. In this one, the die doesn't mean as much. And for gamers that kind of like to pick their situation, where when I play miniatures, I make it where the die roll doesn't matter. And this game allows that. Matter of fact, to me, it's like a cornerstone of the game that, yes, you're rolling die, but it's how can you keep your units without getting excessive fatigue and this you're managing where you want to manage up to the point where it doesn't make a difference what I roll. The other one too is that there's no declaring of shooting for the most part in the game. It happens.
Correct.
I love that.
Because if you're a lieutenant general or you're you're one of Napoleon's marshals or a general of division running a corps, you are not telling those, if you have already communicated to those troops to shoot simply by putting them in proximity with the enemy. Right? That's the natural outcome. People will ask, do I choose when my artillery fires? Not really. I mean, you do by committing an artillery battery and unlimbering it. You have said that it will fire when it has opportunity, because that's what artillerymen do.
Yeah. You're not micromanaging the game. And I think there's so many subtle little nuances with this game that I was extremely impressed with. And I'm thinking, no, this works. Is it for everybody? It should be. And I get it, right? How people grew up thinking about how these battles were conducted. Look, history books have done us a great disservice, but you actually kind of went behind to what was that army or corps commander's kind of problem, and his biggest issue, his biggest problem to solve is putting my people in the right place at the right time. The combat just happens, and there was a general back then that was key on this, and that is Napoleon himself. Did that come about for research, or once again, happy accident?
No, that was very much intentional. I mean, that's kind of what the whole thing is pointing at. This is a game of, if I have staged, what a good way to think of, if you're staring at an ESR table, it is, how do I want to stage the battle so that I win? If I and a couple of people, it came up again at Adeptacon here a week ago. One of our players said, how'd this go for you? And he goes, this game has a really tight OODA loop. And I just heard this term a year ago for the first time. It's not something that I had come across.
I know.
Is it OODA loop or is it OODA loop?
It's OODA loop. Yeah, I can send you a guy that we've had on the show twice wrote a book about Boyd. I can send it to you. Thank you, Ian.
And a year ago, a guy named Jim had played in our game, and he had that same takeaway. And he goes, it occurred to him that, wow, we're playing, everything's fine. My plan is developing, my opponent's plan is developing. And then I realized that I'm behind. My plan has not developed as quickly as his plan has developed, and I am out of position, and I don't think I can recover.
Which is a question I was going to ask. There is a point in time, because you're playing a whole battle, and to me, even just playing with those limited forces, the game does move quickly, but is there any sense once you've gone down a bad road that you can recover? Now, I will tell players, you wait for your enemy to make a mistake because they will too.
Yes. Yes.
And you could turn the battle. And that's why I want to play a full on game with folks that know how to play, because I've had big decisions to make. I had 8, I'm 50-50, good or bad, right? I need to take that. I need to observe and catch my enemy making a mistake. And it's kind of what the game is kind of all about. I don't think you're ever really out of it unless you're playing against somebody that doesn't make a mistake. But the way you maneuver will force them to make a mistake or make a decision they didn't plan on making. So to me, the battle may look lost, but you still don't know.
Well, and Napoleon often is quoted for saying, don't interrupt your enemy while they're making a mistake. He also talked about how you need to trade space for time. And in a lot of, especially in convention settings, but gamers in general, we are way more aggressive than our historical counterparts were. All game. This is why playing Waterloo is never fun. The French should always win Waterloo because they don't have to actually consider any of the things that their historical peers had to. But you can trade space for time. It's not necessarily easy. It's often very difficult. But it is something that you can do. It does mean that you have to realize when to give up on your plan. And you do have to kind of look at the map as an empty chessboard and imagine where you want the parts to be, pieces to be, and get them, yours and the opponents, to move in the necessary ways in concert to create that. It does mean that you may not be able to recover. It also means that if you actually slow down the pace in which you commit elements, more like your historical peers did, you'll have more options and more opportunities to recover. Because in a larger game where you've got more forces and you've got more people on your side and therefore more forces in your army, if you commit everything all at once, it's all going to burn out at the same rate, right? And then you're not going to have anything else. But it drives you towards why things go in. Look at the Battle of Eylau. Battle of Eylau happens over like 14 hours. Nobody fights for that long. Soul's Core, there's a Russian spoiler attack against it in the early part of the morning. That goes on for like less than 2 hours. Then Napoleon commits Aguru's 7 Corps. That's the one that gets caught in the bad blizzard. And it results in the Cav Reserve getting committed and then the Guard Cav getting committed to save the Cav Reserve. But all of that is, again, done within less than 2 hours. And all of that is to buy time for Davout to be in position to attack the flank. And then Davout is constantly cycling his divisions in order to try and keep them in the game, so to speak, because there's a tipping point. They're wearing out, but if I pull them out now, they'll be able to recover enough to be useful again. If I leave them in, I won't slow down my advance, but at a certain point, they're going to break because I've simply pushed them beyond what they can endure. And timing that is very, very difficult. But it is something that you can do in ESR. And it's not, you do it under duress because I have to think ahead. Like we keep mentioning, the command system has an 8 delay in it. And so it is not, I just have to wait until the opportune moment and then I get to move my pieces the way I want. It's I have to make the decision ahead of time.
Right.
And timing that is difficult, but that's the challenge of the game.
So, how some of the combat and wear and tear works within the movement mechanics, it gives the feel, because there's one problem that all games have that we play is that it's not simultaneous movement. But I like that mechanic because it gives that feel of. Because you remember, it's like, oh, hey, are you going to charge? The thing is, we were within range of each other, so we had to look at how the units would suffer from that.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of is, right, this is where your simultaneous movement comes, or that simultaneous play, because you don't choose to fire. If you're in range, it happens. And it kind of gets around some of that. And it does it rather subtly. I like that. I wanted to see whether or not that, that assumption was correct, but I can always ask you. So
with cavalry, cavalry is very fragile in ESR. It's very powerful, but it's very fragile. And it's not always true, but you kind of tell new players, think of it as a one-shot missile. And it might not be a one-shot missile, but you should think of it that way. And with Cav, two different cavalry formations within range of each other. And people ask things like, well, there's an opportunity during the course of a turn for either one of us to commit to an attack, and then they'll just move. So who does that first, right? Who gets who? And the answer is it doesn't matter. If one of you says they're going to charge and the other guy says, no, I'm going to stay, or yes, I'm going to go, all you're just determining is where on the field they will collide.
yeah.
There's no I'm being caught flat-footed because of the scale and scope of the game is so large. That's
Right.
not the aspect you're managing. Like your troops on the demo table, if I remember correctly, you had Bavarian chevaliers, I think, that were just across a ford.
Yeah.
And you're facing what, like Russian dragoons or something that are across the way, and the Russian dragoons are committing against you. And the question is, do you want to fight close to the ford or as far from the ford forward as you can?
So
And that's that's not a tactical question about how the cavalry fight, right? That's a question of where do I need this to happen for all the other stuff I have moving?
So I believe I could have run away from that fight. I didn't,
Yes.
because my division was coming up. They were still
Yep.
in line. The way the rules work of what can start going into a more of a better combat formation, I knew I needed to defend that ford. And if I had to sacrifice my cavalry to do it, so be it. It's small.
Yeah.
You said we're playing, it's brittle. So I believe they got knocked back and retreated anyway. But, in that time, I was able to get that division up in better shape forward, because I know that cavalry is not coming there. They're not going to attack across a ford, not going to attack an infantry division, right? So the cavalry did what I needed it to do, is to buy time. So
Yes.
I wasn't going to trade space. I was going to acquire space, but I needed time to do that. Because it's like, oh, well, I gave the order. So they all, no, you don't know how many are going to start. And it took a while to get those units into proper formation. I would say some of their maneuvering into a combat formation took as long as some of the skirmishes during that period.
Yeah. Dropping a full-size infantry division, and that was a circa 1812 staged demo table, so relatively large divisions. It's going to take 3 turns, maybe 4, to get a division out of its march column into a series of deployed units, and then maybe an additional turn to get them all laid out and arrayed as you want. And you're not doing any of that. Under certain circumstances you can, but you're not necessarily doing that while all frozen in one place. The thing is commonly doing it while it's moving, because what's really happening is the division is marching and I have a regiment, division pauses, a regiment pops out and deploys. They move forward. The division in its road column moves forward, and another part of the brigade pops out, and another part of that brigade pops out, and then I've got a brigade deployed and a brigade in column. If you relate it back to the engagements of the era, that's like at Shevardino Redoubt, a couple days before Borodino. Eugene's corps is forward pushing on the Russians, and Davout's lead elements break south off the main road, construct some ad hoc bridges over a stream, and the lead division, the 1st Regiment, deploys. The rest of the division just follows behind, and they're pushing Jaegers out of the way because they're trying to get a deployment area clear so that they've got room to deploy the rest of that division the way that they need to.
Right. Because the terrain for me to set up with clear fields of fire behind a ford, I was in much better position than my opponent, sorry, Tom, to get that done. So he couldn't advance on his objective. I looked at not only where my enemy was, but what were they doing and how fast they can do it. And, he started pushing himself out of the line, and I'm like, he just doesn't have the terrain. I have the terrain, I have the proximity, and that's why all those things went into that decision to kind of say, that was a cavalry brigade, I believe, right?
Yeah.
I don't need them once the battle starts. I really don't. What I need is that division at that ford defending, because that's tough, right? They're not, the enemy's going to have to come across. The other one I was looking at, and this gamers never do, there was that hill behind me, and I think I asked Todd, I'm like, what's the range on artillery? I wanted to sight my artillery in the best possible position to make any advance you would make, because I already picked up the rules saying, oh, if we're in range, even if you're moving, you're suffering. I need you to suffer before you even get close to my infantry. And I like that I was able to make that decision. And I could have screwed it up because, we only played like a couple turns. But that more games need to cover that, because I think I find that crap really enjoyable. I'm sorry I said crap, but, maybe because I feel crappy. But, it is really getting them into that little space. And I love those little decisions. And then, what I was doing with that division was preventing him from achieving his objective, where the other division was going to try to march on the other objective. Each player places so many, some are dummy, bam, one comes out. That, those are the 1 or 2. And I realized you have to think through that one too.
And you can move them, and that's, during the course of the game, because the objective is, a lot of people hear that and immediately think victory condition. And the objective isn't a victory condition. The objective is a destination.
Yeah.
And you can move that destination, but the timing of it is active until it's replaced, right? And so I can put out the new one, but I haven't rolled to activate the new one, which means my troops are still following the old one. And so if I put out the new one too late, that's how many turns I'm going to continue following my old plan, despite the fact that I have a new plan in my head. But my guys aren't following it. They're continuing to do what they've been told to do until they receive the new direction. And okay, great. So the next turn I roll for it. And if I activate it, then great. They start to turn and follow that. If I don't, okay. Now how many turns are they going to be? They're not inactive. They're continuing to do the last thing they were told to do. But as the situation is developed on the table, that may be highly detrimental to me.
Yeah. So when I got back from the con, the first question, folks that didn't make it, because they have all the FOMO. Well, I know you picked up a new game, right? Because that's what I do at cons, and I actually haven't been in years. I want you to know that. But I said, got into ESR. See those guys all the time, never sat down and play it. And the question I got was, what do you really like about it? I go, it's not about die rolling, it's about thinking. And it's about kind of, as the Germans called it, Fingerspitzgefühlen, which, yeah, it's not a German porn term, but like that certain point of the battlefield where you could be most effective. And it's like you can't take a break when your opponent is going through their decisions. Like you really kind of have to understand. You kind of know that they're going to be heading toward these objectives. That's why I want to play a full game, because I still don't know how you would win. But sometimes it's just the journey. It's not the destination. And I like that, right? Because a lot of other games, you play to win as fast as possible. This one, I just don't see that feeling. It's that different. And so explaining it, he's like, well, maybe I should get into it. He goes, but, I won't, because I know you probably got 2 armies. I go, maybe not, man. So, so he's like, and you're probably already thinking about the third. And I said, yeah, I got Russians and French. And right away, when are you going to get the Prussians? I'm like, yeah, they're probably next, because one thing I noticed about your game, I'm like I said, learned how to play Napoleonics in England, where it's all Wellington. You don't really
Yeah.
cover that. You don't cover that.
We've it's out of print currently, but we had put out a book on the peninsula that covers 1808. It covers January of 1809 too, because it goes through Karuta. But that's been thus far. That's been as much as we've covered Spain, England, and Portugal's involvements. We've done, and as far as our miniature line goes, we've been trying for the last several years. We released our own miniature line in 2023, I think. That sounds right in my head. 2020, yeah, I think it was 2023. I could be off by a year. Doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter.
Of 10 millimeter plastics that we do. And COVID really screwed us up. We were initially going to release them a handful of years earlier. And we were initially going to release French and English, because we had this book, our Iberia book on 1808 out already in print. And so we go, great, we're going to release the 3rd edition of the rules, and we're going to release French and English and Spanish forces for them, because we wanted to have the complement of the campaign guide and the appropriate miniatures. And during the pandemic, trying to manage bringing a new miniatures line into production,
Oh, yeah.
it just didn't go well. That's a whole nother podcast. And so
you could come back. Hopefully, we're both feeling better.
there we go. So we pivoted, and the other book that we had out at that time, we had just released the 1812 book, and so we brought out French and Russians in order to align with that. And then last year we didn't have things synced up yet, but we got out each the 1809 book and the Austrians, not in a simultaneous release, but we got them out both last year. And we released Bavarians, which are useful both for 1812 and 1809. And then this year, finally, we just a week ago, and we began processing pre-orders today for our 1806 release of early war French and early war Prussians.
So that's our big reveal, right?
They are. We are tomorrow. The first shipment notifications should go out, and that we're. When does this get released? So right now is 6 April.
Tuesday, a week from today.
A week from today. Okay.
If you want it earlier, you get. It's. I think we charge like $300 a day. No, just kidding. When does it need to come out?
No, that's that. I mean, people are going to know. Well, at least the people who pre-ordered are going to know, because they're going to start getting shipment notifications tomorrow. And the people who hear this in a week will actually be in a fairly good place, because we sold more than we had expected to, and so we're moving out pre-orders as fast as we can. But it's probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 2-3 weeks before stuff is just shipping on a normal schedule. We normally ship out orders following business day, sometimes same business day, sometimes it takes one extra. It just depends on things, because we're a small shop. But generally same or next business day, and it's probably going to be third week of April before the new releases are shipping that quickly, just because the first thing that I did when I got back from Adeptacon was contact our contract manufacturer and say, I'm going to need more of this list of things, which is a good problem to have, but still a problem.
You guys sold a ton
so those are
at Adeptacon. I am lucky. I was able to get what I wanted to get when I did, because when I went back, I believe one of the 2 boxes was gone. You sold out.
We ran out of. We came back with a couple boxes of Imperial Guard and a couple boxes of early war French and a couple boxes of mid-war French, and those were the 3 things we showed up with the most of. And all of the other force packs, we had some of the ancillary, the add-on packs and stuff. We had a fairly decent spread of those left over, but the force packs that you kind of build your army off of, everything else went. It kind of wiped us out. And so between that and the initial pre-orders, because we don't take all of our stock to the show. We had some. We had some back here. But between that and the pre-orders continued to roll in. And so, all of a sudden it's like, wow, we're going to need a couple more miniatures if we're going to ship stuff.
We're going to need a bigger boat. We're going to need a bigger boat. Which, remember, this podcast is not to preach to the converted. And people go, why do you do the podcast? I go, because if I like a game, I want other people playing it. I don't want to sit there and wonder who's to play the game. So this is about the growth. And people are like, he never says great stuff. He never talks about playing Napoleonic miniatures very much. This game he's crazy. Maybe I'll buy it, because every once in a while I could be right. But I think over the last time flies, And we can keep talking until one of our one of us has to be carted off to the hospital. But to me, I think a lot. How do we get more people into this? Because it's a different experience, and everybody wants to be the general on the battlefield, but most games, you know, you're a major.
Yeah.
Even in games where you see that you're at that lower level. This abstracts everything below that level, right? And to me, it really gets at that higher level of gaming. So yeah, look, I actually painted a test sprue. They're not going to look
What'd
as
you
good
think?
First of all, the miniatures are damn beautiful, and you're right. You don't have to, um, put a coat on, prime them. That it takes the paint really well. I have all the paints. I think I had to order a different Russian green for, because you do have different shades of green, and I want to quickly see where my troops are, because my
Yeah.
Legers, they're going to be in all blue uniforms where everybody else is going to have white pants, and the same for the Russians. But I believe the
We
light.
try to highlight, and
Yeah,
it's hard in some ways, but like, um, all of our foot artillery for the French, for instance, or all of our artillery APA have got backpacks on.
yeah,
And we've had people go, well, why'd you do them with the backpacks on? Because they drop those when they're actually crewing the guns. I go, yes, but the purpose of the uniform is to identify the unit.
right.
And so the horse, we try to play up as much as we kind of can legitimately, um, what the differences are, so that you can spot things. So like our Prussian grenadiers don't carry flags, which is important for a couple of reasons. One, they didn't actually carry flags. They didn't
Right.
have flags allocated to them. And since we include flags in the boxes, and the flags are, we also include them for free download on our website, but like, we haven't posted the Prussian ones yet. But the Russian ones, for example, we've posted hundreds of them because there are hundreds of them. And if you want to make whatever unit, the Smolensk Infantry Regiment, this is the flags that they carried. And you can pull those down, put them on there, and their converged or combined grenadiers did not carry flags. Their grenadier regiments did carry flags. And it's another way to identify what you're looking at.
Yeah, I noticed the. That's why I asked the question, because it's a late war box, and I'm very familiar with the 100 Days, where none of the French units carried flags. They carried their eagles because after Napoleon they got rid of their flags. I don't think any unit there had an actual French flag that I know of.
On the French, I will tell you, we cheat a bit because it's a practical measure. So all of the French, in for ESR, a base is a battalion, like you said, and there's 10 figures. It's effectively 2 sprues, a command sprue that includes the elites, and a fusilier sprue of the rankers. And then you paint those up and you cut them off and you glue them on. But all of those standard bearers have eagles. And the reason is because, one, it's cool.
It is cool.
But beyond that, um, which regiments gave up all of their eagles? Which regiments gave up some of their eagles? So
Yeah.
many of them, the 1st Battalion was allowed to keep it, and the rest had to give them up. And I'm not going to guess the combination. There's no way to set the correct combination in a box for you to model that.
Mhm.
And they're plastic figures, and so if you want to clip eagles off the top, you can. And if you don't, because you think it looks cool for all of your battalions to carry eagles, you can.
I don't.
Um,
I actually saw an eagle that was, I think, captured by, I think, the Scots Greys at Waterloo.
okay, that had to be
At
neat.
Yeah, it's it's so when I lived in England, I was stationed there, and we went down and did stuff with the guards because it's kind of a big honor. Hey, this that, and they have stuff that they still captured back then. And he goes, "Are you familiar with the battle?" I go, "I'm an American, of course not." And it was kind of a lie, but I said a trap, and it was all about. He didn't even mention the battle. It was just about the Scots Greys because that famous picture,
Yes.
and it's in their it's awesome stuff because they're very proud of that lineage where United States we don't have that. We're Americans, it's like it's that thing from what Pulp Fiction. I'm an American. My name doesn't mean shit, right? So you know, I thought it was pretty interesting. I like the Eagles. Matter of fact, none of my 28 mil that I scaled for 100 days, um, none of them have flags, I think. And then I realized, oh, they look kind of like there's something missing. So not every unit has them, but enough do because some games the flag bearer does make a difference. So it's a
And
historical, but
you said there wasn't a flag sheet in your box.
it was not. But
So we that's our bad. There should have been. So we'll get you a flag sheet.
but it's on paper I have to cut, right?
Yes.
So I found yours. Just shoot me instructions on how to print it.
Oh,
And
you want to, so you run into two things. One is they are scaled. The file is scaled correctly, but depending on your browser and computer platform and blah 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 blah, it won't respect that. So
it's a JPEG
um, the height that you want is 8 millimeters.
for the
They're meant to
entire.
be 8 millimeter for the height of the flag
Okay,
is supposed to be 8 millimeter.
I'm definitely gonna have to play around with that. I love technology, but yeah, I just found
Sorta.
I sorta yeah. But when it comes to a printer, because I'm like, yeah, but I got some time before I'm ready to put those flags on. I got a lot of horses and stuff to paint, which I hate painting horses. That is something about your miniatures personally. I don't like that for 10 millimeter, there's so much detail, and you got guys posting on that guy that just posted those Russians. I'm like, mine are gonna look like crap.
Oh,
So
on the Facebook page?
yeah, and
Yeah, the Russian hussars they posted, those look lovely.
because
He
I
did a nice
remember
job.
he did an amazing job, but I'm like, mine are gonna look nothing. And then the other guy, this is my Leger, but like the cuffs, and I'm like, I'm not doing cuffs. Eh, I was looking at the palms on top of their or Tories, whatever you call, on top of the hats, and I'm like,
Yeah, the pom poms and
pom.
plumes.
I know those have to be different color. This is a battalion. I get that it's going to be a mix of that, but I'm like, how am I going to paint that without having to repaint the hat? These are first world problems that nobody should be worried about. But like, yeah, yeah, it's like they paint up well, and looking at them through my, magnifiers, there's just so much detail that I am just not going to do it justice. So I'll be able to
It
play the
makes you
game.
feel better. Neither do I. I mean, you saw the stuff on the event tables and the stuff on the demo
Yeah.
table was all stuff I painted. And while I'm very satisfied with it, I've seen some stuff painted by some of our customers that really, some of these guys do the piping on the collars.
Yeah.
they're not painting the collar, they're painting the collar and they're piping it in whatever other color the piping is. And that's not something now I will tell you that the piping line is actually on the figure.
It is.
I'm just not capable of doing that.
Well,
But we tried to keep the relief really high. So for all of the it's hard to say significant details, but whether it's the turnbacks or on the coattails, or whether it's the tassels on the hussar boots, we try to make those raised enough that it's easy to catch them with your brush.
what I plan on doing, because now we're going to get into, see, we're going in tactical. People are like, where's this going? Everybody knows I am the worst painter on our website, by the way, by far, because we have master painters, and I get tips from them. But like, I've been block painting. I plan on dry brushing to get some of that detail out because it's beautiful, and then doing, like, if I can, on the blankets, to do that if they don't come out with the dry brushing. I know the drums are going to be an ass pain, but it's a 10 millimeter, and I'm thinking, yeah, most people are, between 5'7" and 6 whatever. It's going to look okay on the table. The other one is because I started painting the guys in the rear file first. That
Sure.
I'm going to concentrate on the rears, which, yeah, make your own comment out there, and then put the detail.
But the
on
front of them will be hidden by the other rank to a large degree.
Yeah, because a lot of folks remember when I, ended up getting a ton of the Epic Civil War, and I painted 2,460 miniatures. Yeah, I know they're in strips in 61 days. You can with those because they're not very detailed. These, you do want to do them some justice because they're as detailed as like a 28 or a 54 millimeter model, but they're 10 millimeter, which I find the value of the models to me are great, and the style cast is really easy to paint. So yeah, and then I did what you said. I just said, okay, I'm just going to straight paint them out of the box. It holds the paint really well, and I'm not going to touch the contrast or the speed paints because
Yeah, some people really like using those on them. I've never used either one, so I can't speak personally. But some people paint our stuff using those, and then of course you need to prime them if you're going to do that. But they like the result. They think it's real nice.
Yeah, which takes away some of the detail. So let me just shoot some things at you. But as folks out there can hear, and every time I talk about a game gushingly, I get this: I hate you because I went and bought it. Well, good, because you'll freaking enjoy it. Tell them Mitch sent you. I bet you get a lot of questions about, would this work for the Civil War? And to be frank, this is a game that is particularly suited for that period. But do you get that question a lot?
Yeah, we get. Are you going to release a Civil War version, or can I use it for the Civil War? The other one that we get is, what about for 18th century or 7 Years War? We get asked about both of those quite a bit. We don't get asked about American Revolution very much, I think, because people realize that the focus of the scope is too large.
Right.
Where for the others it's not so bad. I've done some work, not now in a handful of years, but I've done some work on a 7 Years War system based on the same fundamentals, and on a Civil War system based on the same fundamentals. There are some problems I haven't figured out how to solve yet, and some of them is the asymmetry of the conflicts. Like in the Civil War, everyone's always going to want to play the same battles, right? In Napoleonics, there's a lot of large engagements. There's a ton of still very big, less well-known engagements, and that's kind of what our campaign guides highlight, is that, there are all these historical battles that lead up to Borodino, for instance, and many of them are way more interesting than the slugfest that is Borodino. And similar in the Civil War, there's a billion small engagements, but everybody's going to want to play Gettysburg. Everybody's going to want to play Chancellorsville. Everybody's going to want to play Chickamauga. And some of those aren't so bad, but some of them are from the standpoint of how do you design. You mentioned earlier how when you're playing ESR, there's not really a time when you get to tune out and hang out, because you do everything simultaneously. There's not I sit for 10 minutes while you play your turn thing going on. And that was a very conscious decision, that we wanted to keep players on both sides as engaged in the game as possible all the time. Now, when you shift to, and that works pretty well in the Napoleonic period, because, even if you've got a battle like Austerlitz, you've got not the exact same number of players on each side, but you've got several players on each side. Or Jena, there are more French players at Jena than there are Prussian players, but they're, not way far apart. Okay, now let's do Gettysburg. So, assuming that you're maintaining a similar scope of game, you're playing the battle,
right?
Which, as sort of defined by the pattern in our campaign guides, that means that we start you on 1 July, and everything that happens after that is based on the decisions you make. Then you end up with a very asymmetrical game where I've got 3 to 4 players on one side of the table, and I've got 6, 8 players on the other side of the table. And it can start to break down the tempo of the game, just because of how players are going to interact.
Yeah, and Waterloo, I'm sorry, Gettysburg is, you were there. I go every, at least once a year. I ignore the court order. So that, to me, the battle became very canalized, and that's why most histories are of by day, by area on the battlefield, where what happened at Culp's Hill had very little to do with what was going on elsewhere in the battlefield, but it was part of it. And I'm even going to go a step further with the game system, like looking at, this game is about maneuver. I would never want to play Waterloo with this game system.
No, I would agree.
Because,
I mean, people do. A group did and posted a whole bunch of photos of it a while back, and they, was their big event for the year, was they played Waterloo with ESR, and it was this, huge event, whole bunch of gamers, and they really loved it. And that's good. But I would tell you, I look at the Borodinos and the Waterloos, and I go, I think the fun part's already happened by the time everything's staged.
Yeah. Yeah, it's because I've gone to visit Waterloo. It's not very big. The British sat there, and the only maneuver was done by the Prussians that got there late in the afternoon. The French just, what did Wellington say they came at us the same old way, we sent them back the same old way. To use this game system for that battle is it's not the beauty of this design. What if there was some flanking movements? What if Ney didn't? Was it Ney that got lost?
Deerlon.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, Deerlon marches back and forth between not at Waterloo, at Quatre-les-Bras, and it just went on my head. He marches back and forth between those two, and then Grouchy is the one that's supposed to be keeping Blucher off of the field,
Yeah, that's it.
and never arrives at Waterloo.
Right. So it's not even his whole army, and it's just very how it just captures. And a lot of it is because the English were in it. We read books in English for
Yeah.
the most part, and that's it too. But like you got me off my 100 days kick, and I'm happier for it because there's a lot more. And for this game system, I'd want to play some of those battles of maneuver that set up larger set piece battles because that is they're gonna what I like here also is that when you look at players playing a game at any level, they do the same thing that was done historically. They don't change it up. And when you play those big ass battles all the time, right? Yes, let's go with what our audience probably knows best. Cemetery Hill oversees a lot. It's always a victory point location. But I remember bringing it into work and we played it, and we played day one. The final positions were the same as they were historically. And I go, well, what fun is that? And terrain really dictated the battle because maneuver didn't. In this, I want to play one of the setup battles where, I'm going to get you like not where you want to be. And I think to me, that's where the sweet spot is for this game. I don't know if it would translate well to that. And I'm even going to throw this one on there. Same period. I don't even know if this would, be a good game to play the War of 1812 here in the United States because the battles were so small.
And that's about as much as I know about the War of 1812. That and the White House got burned.
Yeah, right up the street.
Yeah. But it is a lot smaller, and it's not my limited understanding is it's not a war of maneuver.
No, not at all. If you really look at the American Revolution, also not really a big war of maneuver because of our terrain and the size. Where you go to some of these battlefields from the Napoleonic period, and living in northern Italy, there's a couple of them, and I'm like, this is where I would fight a battle, and this is where I may not have a choice but to fight a battle here because of the fact is the road network. I need some open fields to engage my enemy where I can be most effective. Like, it's like that thing from the remake of the Alamo movie, right? With Dennis Quaid retreating. I'll know my battlefield when I see it. Yeah, it doesn't really work that way. It's like they're kind of presented to you, but not the beauty of the game. Beauty of the game is for me to put you in a very uncomfortable situation and to exploit it, to leverage it, and not make those same mistakes myself. I dig it. I dig it. I'm excited to play it. Hopefully this weekend or next weekend. If I live, and I'm excited to get my stuff on the table because I could get people that have never played it before into the game. Once again, it's that selfishness of why we do this. But it's if everything that we said here hasn't kind of turned you on to this, just remember it's different. And we don't want that same old gaming experience. And like I said, when I've seen games played, like, the guys that, I was on the staff with the historicals and they ran Brandywine, two games of Brandywine. They did the same thing they did back then. And, my sister-in-law lives on that battlefield. there's a lot of room to maneuver, yet you just didn't want to do it. In a way, it is game rules and the size of tables that are mandated by those game rules handcuff the players to make those same decisions, therefore the same mistakes, and it becomes die rolling. Die rolling becomes very important because you're not twisting anything. This game I
Yeah.
could see where, I'm going to make it where the die rolling doesn't make a difference. You know, to me, the combat die rolls are not as important as the order and maneuver die rolls.
Oh, very
And
true.
and folks just have to, you know, eh, when I see you at a StoreCon, I want to watch new people play this just to hear the questions, just to hear the insights, because it is a different experience. And look, I'm on the webpage now. It's a really good webpage. It's thewargamingcompany.com. And check this game out because Mitch needs people to play with. And and I want to grow this game because it's different. It is not the same old. Like, you know, eh, look, yeah, I do some stuff for Warlord, but not a fan of Black Powder, right? Well, why'd you get
And
off?
at Historicon, if you got a couple of games under your belt and you're feeling comfortable with it, we typically try to run a GM game because we've got volunteer GMs run most of our events.
Yeah,
We try to run a GM game on Sunday, and somebody who might be able to sneak you into that.
I do. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to pay them off, but what I'm excited to is to take this to my local game store, and because when you talk about miniature gaming, it's that connection to the Napoleonic period, Little Wars, the whole thing. It's kind of like go. I remember when I went to
Well, and
Salute.
it's what Kriegspiel gets built out from.
Yeah, and a guy was on Kickstarter. He's remaking it, and I backed the Kickstarter because you want to go back to the roots. It's like it's that thing Robert Plant said. We're a blues band. We have to go back. We stay in our roots, and they also did a lot of drugs. But to me, there's something about, especially going to a salute where Napoleonics is very important, and it's you want to make sure your models are painted well because it's striking, but it's kind of going to that. It's like Americans gravitate towards Civil War, but we want to go back to that Kriegspiel. Do you know what happened to the guy that invented Kriegspiel, von Rieswitz?
No,
He shot himself.
really.
Yeah, people didn't like his game. Could you imagine he had that map? And I run a for this thing called Connections, which if you're in the area, please come. It's for professional war gamers, hobby war gamers. We trade ideas, and we also play a shit ton of games. And I had on one of the I did a like a treasure hunt, whatever, and it's like, but the final clue was a picture of Von Rieswitz's. If you don't like this game, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And one person got it. And I'm not gonna say the guy that started Connections is old, but he probably learned Kriegspiel from von Rieswitz himself. And he goes, "Oh, that's Count von Rieswitz." And I'm like, "Right." He was the only one out of 250 people that got it. And I was thinking of marketing that on a T-shirt. If you don't like this game, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I like those pithy T-shirts. I had that shirt on because I played in the Great War tournament, and it was a picture of Princip, and it said on the bottom, "Hold my sandwich." Come on, we got to do that. So, but
There's a club here that's got T-shirts that say, "I hate this game. It doesn't let me win the way I want to."
right, and you ever wonder from talking because you're a gamer too, like when I work with designers and try to get their stuff to market, the disconnect between what they think is marketable and what folks out there will really buy versus what people are designing, it is vastly different. And
Yeah.
I keep saying, just like you said, right? This game doesn't let me cheat the way I want to. And why are we playing these things? For camaraderie, then fine, do it that way. But I'm like, this game will it's too hard to finish, and I make these I'll tell you what, man, I've gotten death threats from that stuff. They say I know nothing about gaming. I go, eventually, someone's going to prove that true. But like, what experience are they looking for? And that's what drew me towards. I said, I'm going to pick up the book this time. I read it that night, and I got into it because it's the experience I'm looking for in a game. Because it's that different, and I like putting people in uncomfortable situations. That's why they call me.
We wanted to make a game that that was about solving problems. Every time you're staying at the table, and we wanted those problems to mirror the problems that your historical peer in that role had to handle. How long is it going to take for this to deploy? How long is it going to take for these guys to get there? What's the situation going to be like once they get there? They're all timing and distance problems. They're not can I shoot better than they can problems. That's not really a problem. That's just a did I roll higher dice question. That's not skill, that's luck, and that's fine. That might be the game that you like. That's cool too. But some people play for the social aspect, and some people play for just the I like rolling dice and looking at models aspect, and some people like playing for the what is the tactical or strategic or operational problem that I am trying to solve.
Yeah.
And that's where we chose to design a game for. And you mentioned about taking something to market. The first, the origin of this game was I want to make something for myself that scratches the itch, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was, okay, would other people play this if it was available? And that's why I say I look back at it and say the original edition feels now like a test product, because it was essentially, if I put this together, would someone buy it and choose to play it other than me? And then when the answer was yes, there weren't that many copies of the original edition made, but if you ever sat down with it versus the second edition, they're very different in their presentation. The mechanics are changed substantially. Not the fundamentals. It's still the same game. The decision points are the same. But there's a lot more streamlining, if you will, if that's not overly used up. And Series 3 is, again, further distillation of those fundamentals and shedding more of we really don't need that. Yeah, we really don't need that. Those things are just slowing down the parts that this is really about. And that's kind of the development track.
Is Series 3, or Series 3 is what you call it, is that
that's the current.
And that's the question. Are you just going to look to expand it, laterally, covering that period, or is there a version 4 in the works? Because if you got something that works, as I tell people all the time, don't fuck with it.
At some point, there could be a fourth edition of it. There's not a plan. There's not a timeline. There are fourth edition effectively exists in my head as I run it and reread it and play games of it. Yeah, we could probably tweak that a little bit better. We could probably tweak that a little bit. And so if we ever got to the point of putting out a fourth edition at some point down the road, I think it would be a lot more incremental than any of the like I said, from the original edition to second edition was a substantial change. From second edition to series 3 was a smaller but still significant change. A fourth edition, I don't know if one will ever occur, but two, if it does, I think it's going to be far more minor.
Yeah, well, if there is
It's not
one,
going to be yeah.
can you make me a promise? One is you got to wait not only till I've painted my minis, but I've GM'd at least 20 games.
I thought you were going to say, can you promise to change the basing standard? Because that's really the winning aspect of
No.
putting out a new edition is changing all of the basing for people.
Yeah, well, let's not talk about companies that,
Sadistic might be the appropriate term.
but gamers are inherently masochistic. So, I mean, it is what it is. It's, because the guy, Tom, I came with, he's only been to an Historicon for a day, and we went and demoed a game from work at Fallen, right? That was his
Okay.
biggest thing. And I kept asking him questions because he really is, on the outside still looking in. And I'm like, hey, look at this table. Is anybody having fun here? We would walk around, and it was just interesting to get those insights because we lose them after a while. We don't appreciate them. But he, it was funny because he said, hey, can I come over today? And I'm like, I haven't painted them yet. So, yeah, it is kind of what it is. But, for two sick guys, we actually, I mean, it's a long
We put in some
podcast.
time.
We put in some time. And once again, I'm going to thank you for coming on. Everybody knows that once we sign off, Dave and I will just talk about you. And people really think that. Well, why do you have to talk about me? I go, because you're that important. But check the game out, thewargamingcompany.com. I don't remember how much I spent, but I got to tell you, for getting a whole new game system, it wasn't much. So really, it's, if you want to get into it, everybody knows what armies I have. So look, you got to get a French army. They seem to be everywhere. But yeah, definitely pick up the Dave. Thank you off your sick bed coming in and doing this tonight.
I appreciate you having me on. This is fun.
Yeah, I mean, you're always welcome back. So this is going to be out. Some of the new boxes are going to be out. Go check it out. I mean, if you're looking for that different experience, try this game. I mean, it's, for me, how much are those army boxes? Like 120 each?
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's, and to some degree, I kind of wonder whether or not it's stupid for us to do it that way, because it's 3 elements, generally speaking.
yeah.
It's 2 divisions of infantry and a brigade of cavalry, and they're full-size divisions, and it's a full-size light cav brigade, and they've got artillery with them, and you can add stuff to them, but you don't have to. You can play. Our demo games, our event games at conventions to learn to plays and stuff, do not use a whole force pack per player.
Yeah.
They're stripped down.
Price point is kind of sweet. Just I just, because I think I got the 2 books and both boxes, and I think I spent I got the cards and a little over 300, which that's it. I have 2 forces that can play against each other. They got a book full of scenarios they can play, and that's it. But, just like most gamers, I have problems, and I've been like, actually, when we pop off, before I let you go to bed, I'm going to say, what should I get next? And but I appreciate you coming on, my man. And I'm looking forward to playing this game in the next 2 weeks.
I want to hear how it goes.
Yeah.
So then you're
okay.
going to have me back because I want to hear how it goes.
You're always welcome. I mean, I'd love to get you on with some other game designers, just talk about game design. But yeah, we really geek out on that stuff. But once again, sir, thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it back to Sean in the home studio in West Virginia. And once again, thewargamingcompany.com. How you got that internet address is a coup. We'll have to talk about that sometime. But I look for me to get this game, and you live nearby. Well, I have it, is to paint it, and I'll come demo it for you. Just ask. And back to Shawnee in the studio.
Thanks so much for joining the show tonight. Remember to follow us on Twitter at No Dice, No Glory, and keep the conversation going on NoDiceNoGlory.com, now featuring our own message boards. Have a great night, everybody.